Welcome to the Hard Lessons podcast. I'm your host, Charlie, founder of an Oakville-based construction company. Each week, we dive into the world of business, personal development, and the entrepreneurial journey. We'll be talking with successful business owners who've been in the trenches and learned those hard lessons. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take business to the next level, you're in the right place. Join us as we turn hard lessons into stepping stones for success. Welcome to the Hard Lessons podcast. Today we have Amanda joining us. Amanda's a performance coach, works with high achievers, people with busy lives, and can relate to most of the listeners. So I'm super excited to have her on, chat a little bit more in depth, and the nuggets we'll be able to take away is super awesome. So Amanda, thank you for coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me, Charlie. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise. So let's start off, if you don't mind, just introducing yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the title of coach was a tough one for me to figure out what to call myself, right? Because when I first started out, I remember, I have health coach training and life coach training, and both of those trainings involved mindset training. And I was talking to a career counselor I know, and she said, Amanda, if you call yourself a life coach, you're going to scare people. I said, why? So I kind of settled down on the title of being a well-being mindset coach, because I strongly believe that performance comes down to the way that you're taking care of yourself and the way that you're thinking about yourself. And that you need to be aware of those things so that you know how they're affecting you and you know where the gaps are and what you need to do. And you can't be all about performance and not think about your well-being, and you can't be all self-care and not thinking about your performance. So you have to put those things together. And my life has always been a bit of that because, I discovered exercise when I was 11 years old and I fell in love with it. And so I'm the person that always wants to be exercising and keeping myself healthy, but at the same time recognizing that, performance involves working really hard sometimes. And so how do you fit in the well-being piece while you're still having to hustle?
Interesting. And how much of it is of what you coach and teach? How much of it is like the physical and like what you're actually doing, and how much of it you talk about what's like just inside your head?
Oh my gosh. So it's both, really. Some people I think have more of one than the other, but they really come down to two sides of the same coin, because you can push yourself and push yourself and push yourself. But if you have a lot of self-doubt, then you might be pushing yourself into the wrong things. You might be focusing on the wrong areas. You might be holding yourself back from things because you don't think, you've heard people say, well, I'm just not that kind of person. I'm not the person that does that. And the problem there is you are blocking yourself from things without even recognizing it, because we understand that the emotional part of our brain tells your logical brain what to look at. And so if you believe I'm not that kind of person, there are things you're not even going to see. So like people talk about, well, put something into your mind and then you'll see it more. So you buy a red car and all of a sudden you see red cars everywhere. That's great. But then that means you're not seeing all the blue and the green cars. So if you decide I'm just this person or I'm not that kind of person, what are you not seeing that you could be seeing? And so you need to be aware of how you're thinking about yourself, because that's going to affect the way you're going into work and the things that you're doing every day.
So a lot of the mindset and self-talk, that's interesting. And I find it very impressive. Like everyone, it's quite one-to-one from my understanding, or one like to a small group, and having to understand everyone's individual needs. Everyone's so messed up in so many different ways, including you and I, and having to work with them and finding solutions. Like, where did that come from? Like, if you could kind of paint the picture for me of when you're younger or going to school, like where did this come from? Because the skill it takes and patience, I'm sure, is quite impressive to actually get a result and solve these issues.
Well, we can go way back to when I was a kid, and like I grew up with an alcoholic father. So I realized much later in life that I spent so much of my life living in survival mode. Because when you're in a situation like that that's unstable, you're kind of always on high alert for what's going to happen, right? Like, is he going to be angry today? Is he going to be happy? What's this going to be like? And then you have that, well, what's going to happen to me, right? What's going to happen to me if if my whole family falls apart. Luckily, I had an extremely resilient mother, and I attribute like everything to learning from her. And then I go to high school, and I think it was like grade 11 or something, we did morality in our religion class. So we studied development. So we studied Erikson and Piaget and Freud, and I got introduced to all of this about like, how do we become who we are? And so I go to university and I start studying psychology. And I remember our first year psychology professor says, okay, how many of you are in this class, Psych 101, because you want to learn more about yourself and others? And so of course we're all like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, you're just going to walk away with more questions. And that's what it really is for me, is, understanding that, as you said, we all have things going on in our head, like we're all messed up. It's human nature. It's just a part of being a human being that we're always looking at ourselves. Like we're the only creatures on the planet that think about ourselves and that think about our thinking. So we can think negative things about ourselves, and then we can recognize that we're thinking those negative things about ourselves, and then feel bad about thinking those negative things about ourselves. So we can get ourselves all wrapped up and tied around. And so one of the things I try and teach people is you need to look at your behavior from a non-judgmental lens. You need to be able to look at your behavior and the way you're feeling and the way you're thinking as information. And once you can step back and take it as information, then you can decide, what do I need to do about it? And where are the gaps that I need to fill in? Because you are going to have these feelings and emotions. And I think people who are resilient recognize that stuff's going to happen, but it's not going to take me down. And that comes back to your self-worth. You have to believe that you are worthy of the things that you want to have in life. And that if you have goals and dreams for your career, for your family, you want to build a business, that you're worthy of having those things, but they're not going to be easy, and you do have to work towards them. And you are going to have some self-doubt, and that's okay. It's normal. You're not a robot. You can't go through life and not have any self-doubt. Every step along the way, you're learning something new. You can't possibly walk into it thinking, oh yeah, I got this. It's just going to be easy and everything's just going to be smooth. It won't be. There'll be all kinds of things that you can never expect to have happen in your life that will come up. And there will always be hardships. And so you have to recognize how you're responding to those things and how you're treating yourself in those things so that you don't destroy yourself. Or you don't, you see people who build a career and a business, and then 20 years later they walk away from it because they say, well, I built all this, but it's not really anything I want. I realize now this is not how I want to live my life. So you want to build your life and build a career and a business around what you actually want to have, not just for the sake of doing it and then feeling like, well, this is not what I want to do.
Interesting. And like we talked, that's funny you mentioned that, of like doing it for 20 years, and I've talked to quite recently a few guys who have like gotten very far, and the financials are not an issue and the business is there. But they lost their purpose almost along the way and struggle to find that. And whether it's selling that massive business or they feel so lost. And like, what is the advice or frameworks you use to recommend to individuals like that, of like, they've been chasing the thing for so long, and once they have the thing, they feel, they're lost. They don't know what they're going after anymore.
Yeah. So we hear people talk so much about finding your why and finding your purpose and finding your passion, and that's great. But you also have to understand, why do you want that? So if you are saying to yourself, well, I want to build like a really great company because I want to be able to hire people and provide a job for them, and I want to build this great business that people love working at, that's fabulous. I think that's a great mission. But why do you want that? Do you want that because you think, if I do that, it's going to make me look like a really good person, so more people are going to like me? Well, that might not be the best idea, right? Or I want to do this so that I have the biggest company and everybody knows that I built the biggest company. Okay, so now you've built the biggest company. Because you have to remember, we all do things in our life because there's some benefit that we're getting from it. Even when we're doing things that are not good for us, there's some benefit, right? And so what's the reason underneath your purpose? Why are you working on that? And what do you think it's going to give you? And when you come to the end of 20-year career and it doesn't give you what you want, well, then what do you do? So we don't want that to happen. You want to understand what underneath it is. Why do you want this? What's it going to give you? What's the purpose for doing it? And as you're going along, you have to keep asking yourself that, because you could start out and be working in your career, building your business, whatever it is, And you think you know why, and then as you go along, you realize this is not really why, or this is not really what I want. And you've got to give yourself the gift of being able to change your mind. Don't wait 20 years. Don't wait 30 years. If you're a couple years into it and you realize this is not really what I want to do, exit plan. Start moving on. Every time you build a business, people who work in mergers and accusations and selling businesses and that will say to you, build your business so that you can sell it. So always have knowing that this might not be the thing you do forever, and that's okay. That you can move on, you can change. You might discover that I like this aspect of business, but not this. So maybe I need to do something different. But we're afraid that we're going to look like failures, or we look like we don't know what we're doing because we've changed our mind.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah. And this past summer, so we started in February a second location in Newmarket and Aurora. And um, the moral of the story is it was just me being spread way too thin, and it was a full ego decision of like, oh, look at me, I have two locations and we're doing this, and it just made our Oakville, what we're doing here, look way, way worse. And I wanted to continue it when a partner no longer wanted to, because I didn't want to be the person that did things halfway or said no or didn't take things to the finish line. And that decision was made simply because of what other people were going to think. And a month into it, I caught myself kind of after talking to a few mentors, and like they're like, do you want the pain of doing it now, or even more pain of doing it in 2, 3 years with having that much time elapsed? And it kind of opened my eyes to things. So that's funny that you bring that up, because so much of it is for other people and not even for us, right?
And it's hard because once you start working, you get on this track and you just keep going. And if you don't stop and ask yourself and check in with yourself, you don't even realize that you're doing it to yourself because you get busy and there's so much to do and so much to keep on top of. And also, if you're building a company, you have people that are relying on you and you're hiring people, so they're relying on you for a job. So you think, well, I could do more for them, right? I could hire more people, right? And you have to be careful that you're not spreading yourself, as you said, too thin for the wrong reasons, and dial it back if you need to.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, one thing you mentioned a bit ago, taking emotions out of your decisions, of like a very business advice thing for a personal life, which I really respect and agree with. Like, how do you have like frameworks or advice on how to actually implement that? Because it's all it is in your head is emotions and excuses and reasons. So how do you take these emotions out of it? Is the first part of my question. The second part is these busy people. I'm sure it's going to relate to like think time. And if you get just caught up in the cycle of every day, go, 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 like how do you put that time aside? And is it even important putting time aside? Like, where are your views on those few things?
The very important thing about emotions is in order to be able to manage your emotions, you need to recognize them. And if you don't ever recognize your emotions and how they're affecting you, they will affect you in ways you're not aware of. Because you can't ever completely stop or ignore them because they're always there. And the danger is that most people just keep shoving their emotions down. And when you shove your emotions down, you'll hear people say things like, I don't know how I got into this situation again. I don't know why this is happening to me again. And it's because when you shove your emotions down so much, you don't get the information that they're providing you. And remember, emotions are information. So when you walk into a situation and you don't get that gut feeling that says to you, okay, I know something's going on here for me. Or, like you get your spidey senses. Like you just know there's something about this situation that maybe isn't right. Or you recognize that it's ego that you're acting on. If you're aware of your emotions, then you can manage them. And you can say, okay, thanks for the information. Now I'm going to see what I need to do to make a clear decision, because I know I may be acting out of fear. I know I'm acting out of ego. I know I'm just ignoring my emotions because I don't want to face them. I just want to keep running. So you have to be willing to look at how you're feeling without judging it. That's the key. Look at how you're feeling about it so you can say, I know that this is what's driving me. I know I'm making this decision based on fear or ego. so that then it doesn't happen to you. So the next time you get into a situation like that, you go, okay, I know when I get into situations like this, I get scared or I get anxious or I start acting on my ego, and I don't want to do that. So I need to be aware of it so I can say, okay, emotions, you get a voice, but you don't get the final vote. So you listen to what your emotions are telling you, and then you make a decision based on the clear facts of the situation at the time. What's really the best situation what's the best decision for me to make right now? Putting the fear aside, knowing that I have to make a decision here. But you've got to be aware of your emotions because they will come up and they are there to help you, but you don't let them overtake you. You don't let them make the decision. Most people are so afraid of their emotions, they don't let themselves feel it at all. And they think, well, I'm just going to turn it all off. And then you build something that 20 years later, you think, why did I do this? It's exactly why it happens, right? Because you didn't listen to yourself. Somewhere along the way, if you paid attention, you would have thought, is this really what I want to be doing every day? Is this really how I want to live? And part of you might have said, I don't think so. And then you slow yourself down and you think about it.
And that's like it's so relatable to this summer of like um the thing with our second location of and what I struggled with is like there was that gut feeling there and it was there the whole time for that month and a half that I like wanted to keep it going, and it was so hard because I needed to give it like 110 150%, but having that voice in the back of my head was so interesting, and I feel if that experience didn't happen I wouldn't know what it would feel like. But at the same time, I'm thankful for catching it a month and a half opposed to 2 3 years down the road of like, oh shit, this
Exactly.
could have been bad. And it's just a great learning experience because nothing else can like teach you that. There's no course or classroom that can be like, oh, this is what your gut feeling tells like feels like.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
yeah, I
But
think it's just
also,
like, go ahead.
no, go ahead, finish.
I feel it's like just the framing and the reps of like messing it up enough and then
Mhm.
like somewhat analyzing it, whether it's journaling or a think time or walks or whatever it is for people, of like sitting
Mhm.
down and being like, okay, this happened. I felt like this means this. Next time I have this note.
Yes. And at the same time, recognizing, like you just said, you don't know until you go through it. So if you're going to wait for the perfect time to make the perfect decision, it's not going to happen. So sometimes you do have to have those experiences. But then, like we said, make the decision. I've started doing this. I realize this is not working. This is not where I want it to be. So I'm going to change. I'm going to stop it, or I'm going to change it. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. Don't ever feel like you've made a decision. You have to stick to it for the rest of your life, because you don't know until you actually implement things. And this is why I'm very big on people taking action, because unless you take action, you don't know where things are heading. You don't know how you're going to be in that situation unless you're actually in the situation. So you also have to live your life, right? Like there's a quote, is it from Plato, that the unexamined life is not worth living. So the unexamined life is not worth living. But then years later, I don't know if it was Gloria Steinem that said, but the unlived life is not worth examining. So you can't be navel gazing and thinking about yourself all the time if you haven't actually done anything, because you have no life experience. And sometimes those things happen 20 years later because you didn't do it in the meantime. But you'll never know until you try. So you have to be willing to try, get your information. What's my result? What's my information? Is this what I wanted to have? Are these the results I wanted? No. Okay, so I'm not going to do this anymore. Well, that did. My brother has the same. He'll say, well, that didn't work. Okay, what do we need to do now? Because that obviously didn't work. You gotta give
So
yourself that grace, right?
yeah, like you just alluded to like moving too fast with like not having your eyes open or like
Mhm.
keeping your eyes closed and not moving at all. And you mentioned like taking action. And I guess like where do you draw the line of being like too quick to make decisions and not think and analyze the emotions and just like keep moving with your eyes closed? And at the
Mhm.
same time, like analyzing too much and just like overstudying or like, oh, I'm gonna wait for the perfect time and it never comes,
Mhm.
you know? Like
It's
where
so
do you
hard
draw?
because you have to be willing to take action even when you don't have all the information. And if you're constantly finding yourself trying to make the right decision, I need more information. Like at some point, you have to just ask yourself, am I stalling because I'm scared? And am I ever going to have all the exact information I need? No, you're not. Sometimes challenges come up and we get scared because we're really not ready. We haven't prepared ourselves. And so we're right to be scared. And then that's when you have to step back and say, okay, I need to not do this right now because I know I don't have the skills. I know I don't have the people in place. I know that this is not the right time. And you really have to be honest with yourself. And then there are other times when you need to say, I've got the information, we've set things up, we've done the analysis, we just need to go. Like at this point, we just need to go and see how it goes. And nothing is ever the end of the world. Like nothing is ever so detrimental that it's going to completely ruin you. Because even if you make a really bad decision and it greatly affects your business, you've built before, you'll build again. Right? That's how you have to think about it, isn't that you there's no perfect anything. But you have to decide, how much time do I want to spend thinking about it? Or am I just crashing around doing everything? And now I'm really messing things up. And again, it comes back to why. Like, are you purposely destroying things? Right? Are you purposely making a mess of stuff because you don't want to think about how it's going? Or I think this is probably going to fail, so I may as well mess it up anyway. So I can say, oh, look, see what a disaster. That didn't work.
And yeah, that's funny. And like the best thing you get out of it is like a super cool lesson that you couldn't have learned any other way, right? And I think like going back to the framing thing of how we look at and the perspective we put on things is like so important. I was earlier in the season, we were having trouble with a manager, and I really didn't want to like part ways with them. Like it was an awesome person, we got along, but just the job wasn't going as well as I would have liked. But I was really scared. It was our busy season. I'm like, shoot, like let's just get through this, whatever. And I spoke with a few people, and they're like, well, I'm like, what if it doesn't work out? They're like, well, what if it does? And it's like always on the other side of that, it's going to feel scary. And most of the times, the things that felt scary have got me to the next step, whether it's a conversation I'm avoiding or reaching out to someone or just trying something. And the worst thing that happens is a no or an awesome lesson. So
Yes.
you speaking on that is super cool.
And when
So,
you're working with people, they don't know what they're capable of either, and you don't know either until they get all the way through it. And they have to sometimes go through whatever they're going through in order to be able to see how they come out on the other end. And so sometimes it's hard because you have to give people a chance as well. And it can be difficult if you see what they're doing and maybe it's not the best approach, but you kind of have to let them find their own way as well with some guidance, but you kind of have to sometimes let them find their own way as well and see how it all works out, because you can't be controlling everything all the time.
right, like a fine balance of micromanaging and at the same time letting them go way too loose to find like how do you what do you feel is like the happy medium of like getting them to optimize with like business owners running teams and managing people? Like I struggle with it, and I'm curious your thoughts of like where's that fine line to get the best output for both people.
Yeah, I've managed teams before, and I've managed teams within teams, which is also really challenging. And it's being able to make sure that you're always having clear communication, that you can go back and forward with this person, and you're able to say, okay, I see this is happening. I see this is going on. Tell me what your plan is, or tell me how you're approaching this, or being able to have open conversation about how things are going all the time. Because usually what happens is nobody talks about anything, so nobody knows what anybody else is doing. And then you only have a conversation when things go bad. And now I don't want to talk to you because you're my boss and I know I'm in trouble because I couldn't come to you before. So we need to be able to talk all along the way. You need to be clear about what you expect of people that are working for you, and that you are going to talk to them about what's going on. But that it's a conversation. It's not I'm talking to you now because I'm mad at you or you're in trouble. Or saying to them, okay, tell me about how you're dealing with this project. How is this all going down? How are you managing your team? What is this all like? Explain to me what your plan is here, and letting them tell you and being open to hearing that that's how they're doing it, so that you understand that maybe they're seeing something that you don't see.
Interesting. So having it all along the line, like from the very start of being there for them. So when something does go bad, it only comes from a constructive place opposed to them seeing it the other way, correct?
Yeah, because employees should never be completely blindsided by you coming to them and asking them about something. And they think, I've been doing this for 6 months, and all of a sudden now you're coming to me like you're upset that I've done something wrong. You never told me along the way. That's not fair, because people have
Right.
no idea. And you can't just suddenly say to somebody, well, you're doing this and I think you're doing it all wrong. You just can't blindside people like that. It's not fair at all. You need to have open communication right from the beginning and tell them, I'm going to check in with you regularly and you're going to check in with me. And we're going to make sure we're on the right page. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want things to go well. We're working here because this is something we want to do. And we all want to look good. I mean, before I became in management, I didn't care if my manager came to me and asked me about things because I'm like, yeah, let me tell you what I've been doing because I've been working hard. So I want you to know about it, right? Ask me anything. I have no problem with that. But don't come and then tell me I've been doing something wrong and you haven't told me all this time. That's not fair. Because how was I to know? If you don't tell me anything, I'm going to assume everything's okay. Right? And that's the thing that used to happen. People would get their year-end review and they'd be like, what are you talking about? A lot of that's changed now. You can't do that to people all of a sudden. Well, you're not performing properly. What? Could have told me a while ago. I would have done something about it maybe.
Give them a surprise. That's a good point. Changing the topic a little bit. I'm curious. I'm sure this gets brought up all the time, actually. But burnout. What are your views on this? It's like I feel personally, it's just an excuse. Where does your thoughts sit?
So I think a lot of this comes down to how you're approaching your day, and this is why I believe there's a balance because we have the one side that's very hustle culture. Right? You're working. And then we have the other side that's all about the self-care. Oh, no, you need to take care of yourself and you need bubble baths and all this stuff. But I mean, if you're going into work every day, really tightly wound up that I need to hustle. And like on the weekend, maybe on the weekend, I will take some time for myself. Or maybe when I go on vacation, I'll take some time for myself. That's going to be a problem. You need to approach your day as, I'm working and I know I need to work hard, but I'm not going to kill myself along the way. So I am going to make sure that I eat. I am going to make sure that I drink some water throughout the day. I am going to find some time to get some physical activity in. Because if you're under a lot of stress, the best thing you can do is exercise. Even if it just means you're going for a brisk walk. But you cannot sit yourself down at a desk and work yourself to death because it will happen, right? The horrible stat about people who have heart attacks, most heart attacks occur on Monday morning. And they attribute it to people getting up and going, oh my gosh, here we go, starting another week. And that's when it happens. So you need to think about, how am I approaching my day? Am I walking into every day like it's a huge battle? Because we have to be aware of that self-talk and the way we're carrying ourselves, because you carry a lot of stress in your body, right? And so you need to be aware that if that's how I'm approaching my day, am I just taking on more and more and more and more stress, thinking that it's not going to affect me? Well, of course it does. And then getting good sleep. Like, people will sacrifice too much of their sleep. You've got to try and get some good sleep. That's really important too. So I pull in my health coaching when I'm working with people and I say, okay, so how are you taking care of yourself? Please don't tell me you're eating potato chips for lunch because you're never going to make it through the day, right? And when you are at working, now your job is physical. You're a lot more, you get a little bit more outdoor time because you're in landscaping, so it's different. But a lot of people are sitting at their desk constantly. And when they start to feel that slump of, I'm really tired, and that's when I say to people, that is your cue to get up and move. When you feel like you just don't want to do anything and you wish you could go to sleep. Now, if you've only slept for 2 hours, you probably should go to sleep. But if it's just kind of a regular thing with you that you're feeling really exhausted and tired, that's when you need to get up and move. That's when you need to get up from your desk. You need to go for a walk. You need to walk up and down some stairs. You need to get outside into some fresh air. Because as soon as you do that, you have more oxygen to your brain just by standing up. So you need to be aware of how you're carrying yourself through the day and how you're taking care of yourself so that you don't burn out. And if you're burning out, is it because you're doing something that doesn't feed you? Are you doing something, again, you're building something that really isn't making you happy? Because you're not going to wake up every morning and jump out of bed like all excited, sunshine and rainbows, I can't wait to go to work, because it's still work. This idea that people were taught, and I'm glad we don't hear about it so much, but if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, is the biggest BS I've ever heard. I'm sorry, you could be building something you love. It's still work. It still takes time and energy and resources and time away from your family. It's still going to take work. So there's no such thing as jumping out of bed elated. But if you're dragging yourself out of bed because you don't want to go to work anymore because you're getting so exhausted, there's a problem with the way you're carrying yourself and the way you're thinking about it. And you need to look at that and say, what do I need to do to help myself make through the day? What is it about my day that I'm not excited about? Is there nothing that's pulling me into the day? If there's nothing pulling me into the day, I'm not going to be able to push myself out of bed. And do I need to reframe the way I'm thinking about things and get excited about my work again? Maybe I need to inject some more energy into things rather than just going through the everyday. Maybe I need to change things up.
And how do you avoid the mental or like the soft voice inside your head that is like, oh, I want to go for a walk because I don't enjoy what I'm doing. Like even though you have to get it done, or like then these excuses start coming up of like, oh, I need more sleep even though I got 10 hours.
Mhm.
How like what are there strategies or frameworks that you use for these things? So it's like a non-negotiable structure, and within the structure, there's somewhat balance. Like there's
Mhm.
like your noon walk or like a gym in the morning or like I'm curious solutions for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember hearing this expression years ago, and I don't know where I got it from, but someone once said to me, there's freedom in structure. And so you do need to have a structure to your day so that the things that need to get done, especially the things you don't want to get done. They still need to be done. And then you need to have in there, yeah, absolutely. Maybe you have a time that you go to the gym or you go for a walk or you make sure that you just get outside or whatever it is, so that you're getting things done that need to get done, but you're not, like we said, you're not killing yourself along the way. So there is freedom in having structure, but most people hate that. If you tell people, I remember somebody saying to me once, so this is really like a lot of this is me just like creating a better schedule. And I was like, yes, but then you have to actually follow it. So you need to say to yourself,
Yeah.
this is when I'm going to do this. This is when I'm going to do this. Blah, blah, blah. You need to have it out so that it's done and so that other people aren't pulling your time either. Because if you don't have a good structure, you're all over the place. You have to have some kind of structure that you are following, but that allows in there time for eating, time for drinking water, time for going for a walk, time for just sitting back and saying, okay, how am I feeling? What's going on for me right now? I had a person that I was working with once, and she would get really, really anxious when she was doing presentations, and they were on Zoom most of the time when she was working. And we literally took a sticky note and put it on her computer, and it said, slow down and breathe. Because she would start to talk and start to get anxious and start to talk faster and faster. And she would literally not take a breath. And then she'd have to stop and be like, it just doesn't look, I was like, my God, you're going to pass out one day. So we literally put a note on that said, slow down. So she would remind herself to slow down. And then it was okay to pause and take a breath. Because people can see that you're racing through this presentation, and they're probably not catching everything either because you're going so fast. And it's actually okay to stop and take a breath. So you need to be aware of what are the things that I'm doing. And if you ask people, you'll be amazed that they know. Like when you say to people, what's one thing you could do this week that you know would be better for you? They know. What's one thing you should stop
Don't do it.
They know. But they don't always do it. And that again comes back to, well, why not? Well, if you don't think that if you don't value yourself enough, you're going to be putting it out there for everybody else too. So everybody else will pull from you and you don't fill yourself up. And so you have to realize that part of your being resilient is about recognizing that you're worth taking care of along the way. And then it makes you actually better and sharper. Resilience is not a self-care thing. It's a strategic move.